Dragonheart 2, Dragonheart A New Beginning. Um, Let me just start by trying to give a synopsis of what happened here. So it starts off with uh, talking about when Bowen was old. He was his last year. He went back to Drake's home, or Draco's home, and prayed that dragons would not, or made a wish that dragons would not disappear from the world. So he then just mysteriously found a dragon's egg. There's absolutely no clue as to where it came from or how it got there, but he just finds this egg and then gives it to the monk that was in the first movie, who puts it in an abbey, and it just stays there for like 20 years later while the monks watch after it. And in that 20 years, after that 20 years, there's a stable hand. Well, they keep calling him a stable hand or a stable boy, but he's also a blacksmith. I guess those two things can happen at once. Played by Chris Masterson, who was Francis from Malcolm in the Middle, the oldest brother. And he's supposed to be like he's our new protagonist in this film. And I was a little worried because in the last one there was some bad accent work going on. And I kind of thought and kind of hoped a little bit that we'd get some bad accent work in this one. But they just forewent the whole thing. Chris Masterson just talks in his normal voice through the whole thing. So fortunately he didn't try, but I was a little disappointed that we didn't get some really bad English, Scottish accents like in the last one. And the main kind of driving force of this movie is that this new guy has been brought in as the king's advisor, because the king is starting to get some dementia in his old age. So this new guy comes in as his advisor and just starts laying out these proclamations. And he's really making it sound like a cult. People are forced to wear colors based on their class. He makes people recite this old code that Bowen kept talking about in the first movie. And surprise, surprise, he's evil. He's a bad guy. And at the same time that's happening, these two mysterious people show up from the east. And despite what you might think when you see them, you are totally looking at two dudes. They are two guys. Okay? So they show up and they want to see this dragon that they think is there, because there's some great sign coming, this two-tailed comet, and there's supposed to be a dragon, and of course everybody's denying that there's a dragon. And eventually Chris Masterson finds the dragon named Drake, and they get out, and misunderstandings and some hijinks and hilarity ensue, and I won't give away the ending, but the bad guy is vanquished, and everybody lives happily ever after. Except for the bad guy. I was a little surprised to find out in the first movie there was a big cast of well-known people. And again, I'm going to have to cheat and go to IMDb here. Let me go back and look this up. So, of course, in the first one, there was Dennis Quaid and Sean Connery. The main female was Dina Meyer, who was in a couple episodes of CSI, I believe. And she was in that Birds of Prey show that came on a while back. David Thewlis played King Enon, he was a great, just kind of skeevy bad guy. But apparently he was also Professor Lupin from Harry Potter. And then Pete Poswaite played the monk that I talked about earlier. And apparently this guy's just been in everything. But so anyways, there's this big cast of characters. And watching the second one, Chris Masterson was really the only one that I was like, oh yeah, I remember him from a couple of things, mostly Malcolm in the Middle. So I had to look up who played or who voiced the new dragon, Drake. And it's somebody by the name of Robbie Benson. And it sounded familiar, but I couldn't figure out where I'd heard that before, so I looked it up. He was the voice of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. He did a voice for a Sierra game back in the mid to late 90s. King's Quest 4, I believe. He was JT Marsh in the Exo Squad, so he has a pretty good resume of voice acting under his belt. So, and for the most part, it was pretty good. There were a few lines that I don't think he quite gave his all for, but overall, I mean, it's an enjoyable film. The one thing, looking through these DVDs, like this is numbers 3 and 4 in the case, and like there's number 1, and number 2, they really went above and beyond and gave it like this nice little label, but I was mostly worried about, let's see if I can show it, yeah, that PG rating. All the others have been rated PG-13. This one got a PG rating, so I was a little worried it was going to be overly kid-friendly, and it kind of was. There was a lack of blood, and there was one fart joke where Drake was learning to breathe fire, and it came out the wrong end. Apparently, dragons also have an ice lung. That's just a thing. And apparently, all dragons do have a heart door. I was wondering about that with the last movie. All dragons do have a heart door. It's just this like flap of scales that lift up, but you can see it a lot clearer in this one. They lift up the scales, and then there's like a thin thing of flesh there that they do have to cut to get to their heart. So I was kind of glad to see that cleared up, and that thin membrane does come into play in the movie. So they actually kind of nicely tied that up, and all in all, it's not a bad second outing. I mean, Dragonheart was kind of a rarity in the 90s and late 80s. A lot of these big blockbuster popcorn flicks, they tried to leave it a little open-ended for a sequel, and Dragonheart is really just a good standalone movie. This does kind of a nice job of bringing in a, hey, here's something else we can do with it. We can kind of build off of this world. So I'm kind of curious to see how these next two go, because apparently Draco is back. He will be coming back for movies 3 and 4. So I guess I'll have to buckle up for Dragonheart 3, The Sorcerer's Curse.